Richard and Gerard had a lot of history in the past before he disappeared. He always was obsessed with the guns and the army. He would tour Gerard every opportunity he could. Richard had a group of mates he'd go around with at school. Wherever he went, they would follow. Like Luke Jarvis, he was a stocky and well-dressed boy. There's also Jeremy Stanley, or Jezzy he'd like to be called. He's a cousin of Richard's. He's tall, strong and athletic. Jez spent most of his time fueling Richard's obsession with guns by taking him to the local paintball centre. Jez was one of the marshals and worked there on weekends back then. Lastly, there was Colin Rusdale. He was Richard's best friend at school. Colin was the bad influence on them all. There was a time at school where after physical education they would whip Gerard's naked body with wet towels. Most boys in their time at school have experienced wet towel fights, but not to this extent. They'd whip him all over until Gerard was red sore and stinging with pain. This would be done every time they took PE together. They'd stop when the coach came diving in and rescued him, saving him. All he would say was, "You've got to stick up yourself, Swales, or they'll do this all the time." That was easier said than done. When you got 4 strong boys after you, he thought. Another time when Richard and Jez were on their way to their usual weekend session of skirmish, they spied Gerard walking through the woods and lay in ambush ready to grab him. They threw a wool bag over his head and frog marched into the paintball zone. Richard lifted him across a fence in a fireman's carry. They took the bag off his head, stood squinting for a moment. He realised there were 8 people pointing their guns at him. Always the ringleader, Colin Rusdale, started the teasing. "Hey outlaw, we need some target practice, being this is the first game of the season." Gerard wanted to run, but when he tried to, he fell to the ground because Jez had tied his bootlaces together. Then Luke Jarvis joined in. "What do you reckon, Ricky? Points the body and extra balls if you're consistent?" "Yeah, sounds good to me." They all just started shooting their guns then. Every single shot hit him on the body and legs, stinging him intensely like a swarm of bees. "Shit, I'm empty," said Luke. Was frustrated and threw his gun to the ground in disgust. The other boys carried on shooting at Gerard, and Colin was next to be empty, followed by 2 other people in their group, Stu and Zach. They were both of black African origin, with sporty competitive young men. "Not consistent enough to refill," ruled Jez, and he sat down, holding his gun. He looked on with enthusiasm as Richard emptied all his paintballs on target into Gerard's chest. "I won't refill. I've done enough. Come on, boys, let's go then." Richard gave the order, and they all casually just walked away, leaving Gerard covered in paint, sobbing on the ground in pain alone. Final time Richard had a run-in with Gerard was at that party. Richard caught him looking at Kathy sexily, like while she was dancing to music, so he gathered his buddies up so he could exact his punishment on Gerard. They had all been drinking heavily that night. Boys dragged him from where he was sitting to the shed at the end of the garden. Richard was sat at a table and the others pushed Gerard in and forced him to sit down. Luke and Colin held him in a sitting position as Jez came behind Richard and he was holding a pistol and it looked like a Colt 45. Spun the barrel, clicked it open and handed the gun to Richard, and Richard roared at Gerard in his deepest voice. "You want a piece of my girlfriend? Then there's one way you're going to earn your right to try." Richard was inspecting the bullet chamber of the pistol, placed an empty case in the gun, faking putting a real bullet in there, snapped it shut, spun the barrel, and cocked the hammer back, like this. "There are 5 of us here, right? So take it in turns, point the gun on our heads, pull the trigger. The chamber is empty and you live. You may leave your shed and have a go at Kathy. Charles shook his head in disagreement. Colin and Luke increased their hold on him. There's no choice, Outlaw. We're all going to do this whether you like it or not. Richard put the gun to his temple and looked straight at Gerard and smiled. He pulled the trigger and he blinked briefly as the hammer clicked, but no bullet came out. Gerard trembled with fear. Richard handed the gun to Jez, who cocked it again and put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger, and nothing happened. He laughed crazily as the gun was handed to Luke, who had swapped places with Jez, holding Gerard down. Luke quickly took his turn with the same outcome, and he swapped back with Jez, who handed the gun to Colin. Colin squeezed the trigger, and again no shot. The gun was passed back to Richard, and he had a second go. Last one is yours, Outlaw. You must fire the gun, or my mates will do it for you. As this is a 6-shooter, 5 shots have already been fired. That means the bullet is still in it. Take the shot, and if you survive, then Kathy's all yours. Gerard was shaking because he knew the gun would kill him. Do it! Richard bellowed. Gerard lifted the gun to his head slowly and waited a moment. Tears were streaming down his eyes. He squeezed the trigger, and the gun clicked, but no bullet came out, and the 2 men holding him pulled him down. The back of the chair slammed to the floor, and Gerard banged his head as the floor of the shed was hard. Richard came over to Gerard and leaned over him, as if I'd let a worm like you get anywhere near Kathy. You're such an arsehole. If you look at it that way again, then there will be bullets in here. Have you got it? Gerard stayed laying on the shed floor, good 10 minutes afterwards, shaking with fright, and after the boys had left. When Richard first joined the army, he realised very quickly that he was the pipsqueak and the new boy that all his comrades would have a go at, and after a while the initiations would make a man of him. He also realised that what he had done to Gerard in the past was appalling, but regretted the chance to apologise for what he'd put him through. That last incident with Gerard was 22 years ago to this day.